Mr. Srikant Chandragiri is currently working as a doctoral researcher in Max Planck Institute for Biology of Aging in Cologne, Germany. At present, his research involves investigating the mechanism of aging. He obtained his master's in genetics from Osmania University, Hyderabad. After completing his master's degree, he carried out brief research in the notch signaling of T cell development and survival at National Center for Biological Sciences, Bangalore. He also worked at the University of Freiburg, Switzerland, on the molecular mechanism of membrane contact site formation and its role in facilitating the transport of biomolecules between the organelles. He was a recipient of CSIR, ICMR, and DPT fellowships in India and the Swiss National Science Foundation Fellowship in Switzerland. I'm personally very much excited about this. He's a wonderful speaker. Just to let you know, this session is going to be an interactive session, meaning that you might be asked a question by the speaker. So please be ready to raise your hand in such cases so that we can unmute you instantly and you can interact throughout the session within the session when there's the talk. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Srikant Chandragiri now for his presentation. Thank you so much for being with us today. The floor is all yours.
So let's have an interactive session. If you have like any questions or if I ask some question, you can actually unmute yourself, then we can actually interact each other. That would be very nice. Okay, let's begin. I hope you are having good time after such a big second wave pandemic in India. And so now everything is look like almost you are coming to normal life. Okay. Before actually going into my topic, actually, in general, like in my childhood, especially with my sister, we always used to have a chicken banters. She used to ask you, okay, Shri, what is comes first, either a seed or a tree? Okay. Sometimes I used to, one day I would say, seed come, then she will put without tree, how the seed comes. And next day I will say, okay, it's seed, tree comes first, and then again without seed, how seed. This kind of puzzle or riddle we used to play in childhood. I think most of you also had a similar kind of encounters in your life. Either people play with the chicken or egg or a seed or tree or some whatever. Like, but as we grow, actually, we forget about questioning actually how we came into existence, and we're busy with our education, and we'll more focused on the scoring marks and passing out and preparing for the entrance exams. And life will be very busy, and we forget to ask one of the very important question in life, like why, how we came into existence. And there are so many life forms like plants, animals, insects, and everything. How these all life forms existed and in the earth, on the earth basically. So basically, how so much biodiversity existed on the planet, and how it came into existence. This was the main question. To address this question in 1950s, before that, many people tried, and they came up with one theory called evolutionary theory of evolution. That theory is very simple. You will have a common descendant, means, for example, means you have a single cell organism. It evolved slowly, it gives into the organism, different organisms, and ultimately it leads to the humans. It means that you have a common descendant, means common descendant, that is bacteria and or whatever single cell organism, and common descendant for all the organisms like insects, plants, human beings, including you and me. That was the idea. That was the theory it proposes. And what are the first stumbling block in this theory of evolution is, even this single cell, okay, even this life or a single cell, how it came into existence, means you can put in other words, how origin of life actually took place. If if answer is like if you answer origin of life, then maybe you can speculate remaining of it. But the first step itself in this theory of evolution, the origin of life itself is not clear. I think you have attended a couple of seminars last, I think 3-4 days. So far, you understood. Even like this year, actually, we were having one seminar. One professor from Max Planck Institute of Astrophysics. She is actually studying on what is the chemical composition of the stars, extraterrestrial. Basically, she's studying, and she said she's explaining that what are the molecules or chemical molecules present in the stars and how they do and everything. And when it comes to life, she said, I'm not going to say any word about the life, because it is so far we don't have any evidence how the life is originated and everything. So even extraterrestrial biology people who are studying, they don't want to comment because it's pure speculative. And so rest, we don't know whether they existed parallelly or they have a common descendant. And then you also saw this kind of image always that you have first monkeys, then slowly evolved human beings. It's how we have actually studied. Then I want to ask you a question. What actually kind of evidences you have, or why you think that all came into existence from the single ancestor or a single descendant? If you like, why you think this is, what is actually strong evidences like one we have that to say this thing is true? If anyone have some thoughts, please unmute and you can share it. Then we can proceed further. I hope you got my question, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please make it fast, Niket.
Yeah, I think that like most of them have are like mammals and having common characteristics, as we already know. Like all of them has four limbs. Then most of the organs are also found in all of them in this diagram shown for human development. Like they all of them will be having kidney, respiratory system, all these complex systems will be there. So they are categorized in one form, but other organisms lack in some of the systems. Um, that's how they are characterized differently then. And somehow they, if we see monkeys also, then so many common characteristics are seen. Like they have emotions, they have consciousness. How humans react to different situations, also they somehow react. That is the thing. Okay, thank you, sir.
Well, okay. Basically, you are saying that other organisms having some similarities and they are less complexity. That actually telling that they could be having a common ancestor. But I would also say that they also existed parallelly. They may not having common ancestor. Maybe they existed parallelly. Like we can also refute this thing. But anyway, what actually scientists like what is actually in the field actually going on to explain this thing actually. People mostly earlier days nowadays also mostly rely on the fossil data. Okay, you have a geological scale, different strata, whatever the fossil records available. Based on that, okay, these are the species available during this time, so this many years back, and these are the organisms found in this strata, so this could be this many years back. But it doesn't answer that whether they came from a single descendant, but whatever. And second thing is this fossil data always inconsistent, means like every time you find a new fossil, then it actually uh, disrupts, means like you have to rewrite that again. It's like, there are so many papers in the science and nature journals. Here I kept a couple of them, like I was just looking at them. It's like, okay, they found the one fossil, then they're asking that we have to rewrite the human evolution. Everything, new fossils actually, fin fossils find advantage to the human evolution. So this fossil data always like very inconsistent, and whenever you find a new fossil, it actually poses like a question that it questions your whatever theory you have and whatever tree of life you made, phylogenetic trees, whatever it is, then it really questions it. It's then actually this evolutionary theory, this was the initial days proposed by Charles Darwin in I think 1850 or somewhere around. I just want to briefly mention about what he actually said in 3 sentences. He said, you have a small modification in organism that leads to the evolution, and they share the common ancestor. That is what we were speaking. And another, the fascinating thing he proposes is nature selection. This is one of the actually main thing he proposed. He said the better suited organisms actually favored by nature selection, and they produce more organisms than the less suited organisms, means higher fitness organisms having better survival than the lower fitness organisms, and they have a better adaptation as well. So majority of the most of the time people understood evolution or nature selection, especially nature selection, like they didn't understand properly, they misunderstood most of the time. So in order to have a natural selection, you need to have a genetic variation. Basically, this is a phenotypic variation. Here in this picture, you have brown rabbit and white rabbit in the snow, in the background of snow. When they mate together, and you have a heterozygous, slightly less brown or less darker colored rabbits. When fox came to hunt, then this dark brown color is very much prominent and appears very on the white background. So fox can easily spot on this dark rabbit, and they can actually hunt it. And over a period of course, the white population produced more and more offsprings. Then, and at the same time, the darker one disappears by like fox. So over a period of time, you have more white rabbits population in this region. Okay, this is how natural selection works. It's like you have like a already variation in the phenotype. This is being selected or being favored, actually, not instead of selected the word, being favored in the situation or a condition, so that you will have this population produce more and more offsprings, because they are you have more rabbits, white rabbits, it produces more children, and it increases more and more like that. This is how the natural selection works. But when actually Darwin proposed this theory, he doesn't have any idea about the genes and how these traits, the color or whatever phenotypic traits, actually inherits. So later that molecular biology advanced and genetics came into picture, and then you will know that, okay, these phenotypic traits are encoded in the genes in the form of DNA, and those traits are heritable within the generations and generations. So then later in 1930s or something, the geneticists actually stepped in this evolution. They're trying to explain this thing in terms of genotypic frequency and gene frequency. Basically, they're trying to explain at the molecular level how this evolution is happening based on the genes and gene frequencies. So there are two terms actually I'm going to talk next couple of slides. To understand that, you need to understand what it is. So basically, any organism, like including we have 23 pairs of chromosomes in humans, especially. These chromosomes in the pairs, actually, for example, 23, you have 23 two pairs in the chromosome. So each chromosomes, they are basically DNA. this DNA, this is a gene, for example, A and A is a gene. Each gene have two genes, means basically two alleles. We say alleles in the genetic term, means A and A, placed in the called locus. This so basically, when we say gene coding for a white color for a rabbit, it has two alleles. One is in one chromosome one in this chromosome, another pair of the chromosome. For each gene, you have two alleles in a for everything. So, for example, here I just repeated for this also. You have two alleles, homozygous recessive alleles. You call recessive if you write the small letters. In the heterozygous condition, when they two mate, you will have a heterozygous color. It gives a brown color. When I say alleles, means like a genes actually representing, because you have a two pairs of a chromosome, so you have two alleles. This term you will hear very frequently after this. Basically, the geneticists actually step in and they propose the modern synthesis, like how this evolution is taking place. They're actually mathematically, they're trying to explain the frequency of genetic variation in a population, how it changes over time. And Harding Blah, like he proposed, basically, in order to have this evolution, you need to have, this is a two-step process, basically. You need first genetic variation in the population. That is actually arises from the mutation. Mutation means like you have a gene, it's made up of DNA. Any change in the nucleotide, if, for example, here I mentioned here. Here, if you look at carefully, these are the base pairs, adenine, guanine, and base pairs. The DNA is made up of base nucleotide bases. And if you change the one base due to the radiation, or it could be mutation, could be happened by replication, or it could be anything. Then it leads to different mRNA, because changing one letter, here you have a different protein. Here, instead of glutamine amino acid, you have a valine. Actually, changing one base pair, if it is genes encoding, mutation happens in the genes, then you will get the mutated proteins that actually it could be beneficial, it could be deleterious, sometimes it be neutral. So here actually changing just one base pair actually it is leading to sickle cell anemia. This is another genetic disorder you have, even my friend daughter has. Basically these children's, they will not have, their blood cells are turned into the sickle cell shape, and they are not able to breathe properly with the shortage of oxygen, because these red blood cells cannot carry. Most of the time, these mutations are actually deleterious, and sometimes it's neutral. Very rarely you will have a favorable mutations or beneficial mutations. So first, in order to evaluate through this evolution, you need a genetic variation that actually comes from the mutation in a population. Then next is how actually these variation actually being favored, how these gene frequencies are changing over a time in a population, that actually. Then there is a Hardy Winbagla, this G.H. Hardy, he's also worked with Ramanujan and Winbagla, another mathematician. There are also some other geneticists also came into the similar conclusion. They're saying that if population is large, in a random mating population, if this population is not affected by mutation, migration, natural selection, and genetic drift, this population, if it doesn't affect, then this population do not change or evolve. It always stable. It attain the equilibrium, means like, always in the equilibrium stage 0.5 frequencies. Actually, you can calculate the gene frequencies, allele frequencies, but you don't have to know all these things now here. So if allele frequency in a population do not change, if they are not affected by mutation, migration, natural selection, and genetic variation, genetic drift actually. And next generation, actually, these frequencies, allele frequencies, they get stabilizes and their states remain as constant, heterozygous condition. Okay, these calculations you don't require. So what actually it is trying to say in this Hardy-Wing-Bagla is, if population cannot evolve when there is no selection pressure, means natural selection or mutation or migration or anything. These are actually required for the population to evolve. Okay, and reproduction alone does not bring any evolution. So in order to see the evolution in a population, you need these 4 factors: natural selection, mutation, migration, and for example, like you have a selection is favoring for one allele, like for example, capital small a recessive allele. For example, in case I showed in the dark brown rabbit, over a period of time, if selection favors, then actually it reaches to the highest maximum of genetic frequency. The whole population actually having the red, dark brown rabbits. If selection favors for the allele for the white coat rabbit, then whole population actually reaches the highest whole population having the frequency of white color alleles for the whole population. Sorry, I made him. So, but at the same time, the you will also have a 0 frequencies of alleles for small a means dark brown rabbit. In when there is no selection, mutation, migration, or anything, it actually attains the equilibrium. The frequency is always 0.5. So always the total frequency of a gene or allele in a population is always 1. Okay. So these are the 4 factors required to population to evolve. But at least I am not going through all those things because you don't require all of them. But at least I will touch a couple of them here. We'll see how actually this population affects. So I already explained the mutation, what it is, and how the changing the DNA base pairs actually leads to what kind of phenotype it is. It affects the phenotype basically. So, for example, if you take a population having the allele G1 having 50 people, and if you have a forward mutation took place and it converted to the allele G2. So if the forward mutation is higher at one point after, if forward is mutation higher, then the population from the in a whole population, the frequency of G2 allele increases in the population over a period of time. And if the population is higher, the reverse mutation is higher, basically the population remains higher for the G1 allele. But over a period of time, if there is no selection pressure, they establish the equilibrium state. Okay. Another second thing is migration. Actually, you have a population, for example, blue people, like let's say allele A, and A is a red color kind of population frequency allele in this population. In this population too, you have a more kind of red kind of organism, red color rabbits, and you can say it's a blue color rabbits, whatever. And if the blue color rabbits migrated to this population, then in this population, the frequency of capital A allele increases in this population. Basically, in this population increases with the next due to migration. What actually it leads within the population, the difference between the population actually reduced, but between the population, it is actually increasing. You can see here how actually migration affects. In a nutshell, like here actually I depicted how these factors, evolutionary factors, plays a role, increases the variation in the population. So when mutation migration actually increases, they actually increase the genetic variation within the population as well as between the population. But genetic drift always, because due to the founder effect, it decreases the genetic variation within the population, but it increases the between the population. So similar to here, I hope you got it. So basically, next, whether these factors create the new species, the evolution, whatever we are talking, I didn't mention after genetic drift and natural selection, but all those factors. But here in the previous slide, explain how actually they increase the variation between the population and within the population, gene frequencies and genotypic frequencies. Now the question is whether these factors is sufficient to make a new species? Are the question, because the frequencies may be changes in the population, and you maybe better adapt to the new environment, but does it leads to a new species? Okay, for example, you have a rat, like for example, I don't know, you have a hummingbird, does it lead to another kind of bird or something different species? So actually mutation always gives a variation in the population. And another thing I want to mention in this thing is, we have a tremendous variation within the population. If you take any organism, in humans or any population, human population or any, you have a tremendous variation. We don't require any new mutation to create a variation actually. If not only in the genes, but also in terms and at the genetic level, you have a lot of variation, even at the protein level. But even this variation is sufficient to change the gene frequency in a population. But still, though we have this much variation, I don't know, for so many years, still we are still as a human beings, of course, evolution processes, people say it's very slow. We'll go into it slowly. So I want to just mention that majority of the time, the mutation is always harmful, and it could be neutral. Other times it could be neutrals actually. So when it is a neutral mutation, you will not see any impact on the phenotype. Beneficial mutations are very low, and then we'll see how actually this affects in the population. For example, I want to mention like what is the constraints of this evolution? You can say trade-off. There's a very good paper in PNS. It's published in 2017, I guess. Yeah, you can read it if you want. Okay, in a simple terms, like you have a faster allele. You have a cheetah here. You have a fast. There is a mutation or whatever genetic variation. You have a fast allele. When you have a fast allele, if cheetah can run faster, then it can hunt very easily. So it's actually beneficial. But what cost this allele can be fixed in a population? For example, if you have a fast allele, then you need to have a longer leg. It's actually ultimately it leads you need to have a longer legs. Longer legs actually, if you are running faster, it's very fragile. Even you have a ligaments and everything reduce the strides. So, but having fast allele for a cheetah, it is not beneficial at all. Okay, so that means next we'll go to another example. You have a fast allele again. Next example, you have a fast allele, and but basically you want to produce longer legs, but the remaining genes for the development of cheetah, all these genes actually made for to synthesize, like made for to design for or make this kind of legs. If you produce longer bones, then this muscle may not be formed well properly to the long bones. So it maybe long bones can protrude itself. So it creates a problem. Like we always see in the humans also, when you have extra bone or something, doctor says it's not good, you want to eliminate it. Though you even have a allele, but you cannot, it's not beneficial, because it cannot actually, because other genes are actually made for to have a small legs or whatever, good legs. Basically, it means that nature selection may not produce the perfect organism. Maybe sometimes, but majority of them is. But all organisms on the earth, all the population and all organisms are fine-tuned to their environment. Either take humans or whatever, cheetahs or insects and everything. Even like insects, I was reading one paper. There is no evolutionary pressure. There is no change out of millions and millions of years. Still, their cockroaches remain cockroach, but there is no changes at all. There was a good paper actually. I forgot to mention the reference. So this is from Wisconsin University. She is one of the prominent evolutionary person. She's saying actually, new mutations don't create new species. they create offspring that are impaired, basically. Because most of the times mutations are harmful. Maybe sometimes you have a mutations, but for example, in case of fast allele, you have a fast allele, but you cannot fix it anymore because it deleterious for the cheetah to run faster because it breaks bones. And another scientist from France, he's saying mutations have a limited constructive capacity. And however, because of no matter how numerous they may be, mutation do not produce any kind of evolution. Actually, sometimes it may help for adaptation because you have a plasticity. You can that helps for adaptation, but creating new species is a big question with mutation actually. And here actually I'm playing one video. Okay, sorry. After this video, we can actually talk about it. Are you able to see this thing?
Yes.
Beavers are vegetarians. They gnaw through bark to eat the sugary layer underneath. They've been gnawing through forests for 20 million years. Felling trees with your teeth takes great strength, skill, and patience. One technique is to slice halfway through and let the wind do the rest. The beaver's incisors are strengthened with iron, which makes them orange. They grow continuously and even self-sharpen. The pond makes it easier to move around the heavy logs they need to build their dams. Out of the water, it's a struggle. Stones help weigh down the base. The whole family works together, carefully interlocking the timber. They dredge mud from the pond bottom to seal the dam. Each pond traps several inches of sediment every year, so there's plenty of it. The young act as apprentice builders, learning the tricks of the trade. The final results are impressive. In the Rocky Mountains, beaver dams slowly filter billions of tons of water.
Okay, we have seen this video, right? So there are, from this video, actually, this is the beavers, actually, they're constructing the dams. And basically, one thing, like you don't, like living things do not evolve to fit into the existing environment, but they can co-construct and co-evolve with the organism. Like for example, beavers, they can construct dams, they can do it. And second thing, beavers, the next generation, the children or younger ones, they're learning from their parents how to construct the bridges and everything. This is nothing to do with genes and genetics. It's completely culture and it's completely cultural actually. It's learned from the parents and it's nothing to do. So, and second thing, the changing the adapting to the certain situations, everything is not always changing the gene frequencies or allele frequency. It could be the changing the extra genetic mode. For example, when during World War II, there was a strong famine in Netherlands because of scarcity of food grains. That leads to changing the epigenetic modifications lead to all people who lived that time. That actually they inherited to the next generations. So this adaptation is always not our evolution or whatever the frequency, always not about the genes. It could be extra genetic also, and also this plasticity is always there. The organisms who Plastism, niche construction, for example, beavers, they co-construct according to their surroundings and everything. So you cannot actually everything reduced to the genes to explain the behavior or the evolution of any organism or adaptation of any organism. There is a new theory, the extended evolutionary theory. There are a couple of scientists actually they're trying to propose this theory. When actually put all these parameters or variations into the mathematical models, whatever we discuss, it actually gives a different prediction than what we seen before, like what is existing prediction also. So basically, you cannot actually, it's not a good idea to reduce everything to genes actually. So, so far, okay, people say now how gene frequencies is changing their population, whether it supports evolution or not, because most of the times it's not actually creating any new species. And people say, okay, back in days, maybe it happened, but is it possible to replay, means replicate the same thing in the laboratory? So this is one of there are several long-term evolutionary experiments they have done in the nature, also they have done in the Drosophila and other things. But here I just picked one. This is a experiment started in 1988 actually. Yeah. Okay. If I'm right, yeah, I think 1988, I guess. What he has done, he actually cultured the bacteria, Escherichia coli, common bacteria, laboratory bacteria. And they actually cultured these bacteria, means like 65,000 generations, means like, 65,000 generation means, for example, if you take humans, okay, it's my generation, my father's generation, my grandfather's generation, like that, 65,000 generations. Okay. And they collected every time, every time they collected the samples, and every 500 generations, and they freezed and they checked. Over a period of time, this, I don't know, maybe 30 years time or 20 years time, this bacteria, there are so many mutations actually accumulated. Most of the mutations are harmful, so they are deleterious to the bacteria. So those bacteria died, and whatever better having the beneficial mutations or better fitness of those bacteria, they actually proliferated more and more. And over a period of time, you will see the different adaptation of the bacteria in a population, like, different adaptations they found better fitness or something. So these things. But what it is, they fail to create any new species, even though they spent 65,000 generations, but they did not create any new species. That means that even if you extend, I don't know, even extend you at 100 more years, I'm not going to see this gram-negative bacteria is going to create a staphylococcus or whatever other bacteria. Forget about the bacteria, like even it's not going to lead to any fungus. That is what. So far 30 years, we didn't see anything. There are a couple of papers published on this, but there is a variation. The mutation actually creates the variation in the population that actually helps the adaptation to the specific environment. But I already told, we don't actually require any more mutations, because we already have a lot of genetic variegatedness in the population that is sufficient actually. So the important message here is like, you don't, even you fossil, back in days, nobody saw what is happening. You are always relying on the fossil records. But even you try to replicate this thing in the laboratory, you are not able to create any new species. You are only creating the variation of the E. coli population that actually helps in the population either to better adapt or less adapt to the situation or conditions for living system. But the whole idea is we want to have a new species, because that is what we claimed, that evolutionary thing actually claimed in the beginning. With the slowly changing the modification actually leading to all the species actually came from the common descendant. Means like you have a different new species, but there is no species, like this bacteria never became a fungus or whatever it is. So here is the conclusion of my talk. First assumption for evolutionary theory, you need to have a common descendant. That means first you should know whether we have a common descendant first. The origin of life itself is not clear in the scientific field. We don't have any idea how this life is originated. Second thing, organisms are actually fine-tuned with limited plasticity. Means, okay, some mutations you can accommodate, and but if you change anything in the coding sequence, most of the time it's any mutation actually gains. For example, the cheetah excrement or sickle cell anemia, hemoglobin mutations or anything. So organisms are actually fine-tuned. If you take any organism, you try to mutate, actually most of the time it's coming the deleted mutations in the laboratory. Basically, we didn't create any new species. You only see that. For example, Drosophila, you will say Drosophila melanogaster having red eyes is one species and blue eyes are different, but it's a Drosophila is Drosophila, though they have a different phenotype in the eyes. But of course, there's a big problem in our field is to define what is species actually. And selection actually you cannot reduce the genes actually. It could be metabolic adaptation, it could be extra genetic information adaptation, it could be anything. And organisms actually not only it's not fit into the pre-existing environment, but they also co-construct and co-evolve with the environment. And long-term evolution experiment, actually I showed the previous slide, they didn't fail to create any new species. Rather, it only created a variation. You have a different mutation in the E. coli that helps in the different adaptation rate. It creates the different fitness, but didn't create any new species. So maybe it could be that all organisms exist parallelly throughout the time. It's not that all the organisms came from the single descendant. Maybe they existed all the time. It's just that we didn't find the good fossils. Maybe one day if you find a good fossil, maybe you say yes. But it's time to rethink actually this evolutionary theory. We have to accommodate all these things. Okay, I think my time is up, exactly 45 minutes. So here is you go for question and answers. Thank you for everyone for your attention and for such a nice platform to discuss some things which we don't discuss in academic career. Yeah, I would like to receive your questions and opinions.
Yeah, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation, and it's exactly on time. So I would like to request our participants to please come forward with lots of questions, and please raise your hand, or you can also write in chat, and we'll address your question. Yes, so please show me, Deep. Can you unmute? You can unmute yourself and present your question.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Professor Srikant. It was a nice talk. Thank you. So two things caught my attention. The first one was when you asked what is our basis of in which we say all these species or our evolution has happened. So that time I wanted to say that in present developmental biology, there is we talk about embryological evidences. So as we take humans to be the most evolved species around here, so our embryological studies has showed that in every step of our embryo development, we passes the stages of say the primates, then the aquatics and all. I think you understand what I am saying.
Exactly.
We from fish to mammals to we have all traveled. So that gives us an idea how the evolution might have happened. And now coming to my question, actually, it's from the quote of Lim Margulis, which you have said that mutation create evolution create offsprings that are impaired. So there is another theory that is runs along with natural selection, is known as sexual selection theory. So if the offspring of the coming generation are actually acquiring more defects, so shouldn't the parent generation more focus on just adaptation rather than reproduction? That is self-preservation rather than passing on the genes. So this is my question.
So, first thing when it comes to embryology, okay, having similar things, okay, the complexity, you say complexity of the embryology is increasing from the fish to whatever mammals or whatever, that actually doesn't tell you that they came from the same species. Okay, that only tells you that they have a similarity. Similarity doesn't mean that they came from the same species. Okay, common descendant, not necessarily. Second thing, okay, when you have okay, whatever sexual selection, whatever selection you have, when you have a mutant alleles or a defective thing, the next selection, you have a less chance to adapt to that situation, like to the environment, whatever it is. So eventually, if we exclude the humans, the other living forms, they have a less chance to produce offsprings. So eventually, those genes eliminated in a population. Actually, so basically, the frequencies of alleles or genotype will slowly, with the time, they actually eliminated in a population over a period of time. You don't see them much. The frequencies reduces over a period of time because they fail to produce more offspring when compared to the highest fitness alleles organisms. So that's how this eliminated actually.
Thank you. Thank you for this answer. So we'd like to go for Ishan Joshi. Please unmute yourself and also try to keep your questions short to the point so that we have more interactions. Yes, Ishan.
Okay. Good evening, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you
Yes,
are.
go ahead.
Sir, I wanted to ask that there have been some species which we believed were extinct,
Yes.
like millions of years ago, and even recent history. Like I would like to take the example of the coelacanth, which was believed to be extinct 66 million years ago, but it was discovered in 1940s. So I wanted to ask uh, what could have been the reason that they went on undiscovered for so long, and also like the Galapagos turtle.
Yeah, okay. What actually went so long is like it's very simple because you cannot explore entire Earth. Because recently I saw one news that there was a dinosaur like they found in Australia or Canada somewhere I read. Because okay, you cannot explore whole Earth. What is there? Like whenever you excavate something, that time only you will find these things. Okay, there's a different species when actually those species, if their environment is not favorable, like for example, then that time they go extinct. For example, in India recently the poaching is very high. They're actually giving a big threat to the big cats means tigers. So it could be anything due to environmental factor, whatever, they may go extinct. So, but when it comes to your question, like finding the fossil is always like you cannot explore entire Earth, what is there underneath. Whenever you found it, like excavation, whenever you find it, then you can place say, okay, this species we found it, and then you can actually try to fit where it can fit, in which million years it can fit, and then only you can say that. But yeah.
Yes. So I would like to request Vasudev Raji, please, you can unmute yourself and pose your question.
Hi, Srikant.
Yes. Hi.
Thank you. Very nice, wonderful lecture. Very technical at the same time, very engaging and interesting.
Yes.
A very rare combination to find. It is very nice. By going through your presentation, when a new fossil evidence which contradicts evolutionary theory, they rewrite the timeline, but they never discard the evolutionary theory.
Yes, that is true. I agree.
So it looks like we have gone to point of no return. Whatever evidence that may appear, it will be adjusted or observed into the evolution itself. And is there, what kind of evidence can falsify evolutionary theory? Number one. Number two, we also have seen in the previous our conferences that when the evidence threatens the evolutionary theory, evidence is discarded most of the times, saying that evidence has an error or something like that. So, is there any chance for any other theory other than evolution in spite of new evidences, fossil as well as otherwise in research into consciousness studies, whatever it is? Is there any chance for any other theory?
Yeah,
And what can
actually,
change it actually? Is there anything that can change this theory?
it's a difficult question at this moment because there are other theories recently as they're coming up. One thing is like for experimental evolution, most of the time, first thing is we don't, we have a very difficult in define the species. And second thing, even like maintaining so many generation experimentally, it actually not creating the new species, rather it is actually creating the variation between the species within the population. People always confuse that one is timeline. Okay, it is long timeline is required to evolve into new species, but I don't know. This is like it's difficult to question whether that is not. But at the same time, you will also have a constraints in the evolution. Even you brought the variation, but that may not fit into the organism all the time. Most of the time, like 70, 90%. For example, I gave an example. Cheetah has a fast allele, but you cannot accommodate because whole body is designed for to have a certain kind of length or speed or whatever. If you increase it, then it can actually break the bones, legs. So I think slowly people are actually in the evolution field because the one in our field, in the evolutionary field, it's resistance is there. Of course, I agree. When new ideas, new thought process comes, they're trying to not. They're not willing to accept it. Means like there is no welcoming option much. But at this moment, actually, there are. I don't have a. I have to think very carefully what actually is this very good data or a model or a mathematical model actually tells that this evolution is not true. I have to think about it actually. At this moment, I don't have a very good answer for this actually. Though evidences are indicating, but we have to put in a concrete and strong manner. But at this moment, I don't have.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for this. And thank you for a nice question. So I'd like to ask Niket Kumar Jha to unmute yourself and please make it short and to the point. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. Thank you for your lecture on genetics of organism. I have prepared one paragraph like how much you can grasp and answer in short time. You can answer hopefully, like because so many questions are there. Like why genetic mutation rate is very low, but environmental change is happening very fast. And then how E. coli has been favored by mutation since later produce unfavorable means since mutation generally was unfavorable things. And then sir, how organisms evolve single cell to multi cell since like dinosaurs are very large organisms means
Niket, can you please ask one question? That would be nice. Otherwise, this is such a mess that it won't be beneficial for anyone. Just ask one question, and if there is time, we can come back to you. Yes.
Or you can drop an email. It's okay.
Yes. So for now, you can ask one quick question.
Okay, fine. Okay, fine. I'm relating to the first question. What was asked by the first participant? Are natural phenomena not favored? And is mutation random process like offspring sometimes evolve in different way? Like some species of similar pair chromosomes were likely with same pair chromosome. Like, but nature has to revert it like for the new generation of species. So, is mutation random or is it favoring means how it is going.
Okay.
You get
If
me?
I understood your question correctly, you are saying that if you have a mutation in a population, the offsprings may actually vary and they can grow differently and create a new mutation and it completely differ each other. Of course, they can differ each other. The question is, and also like you have a lot of variation, lot of mutation in a population, because even if you take the human population, is no one is similar to each other. Even me, I differ from my friend. I have a different features, and everybody, you have a tremendous genetic variation in the population. But that variation, is it sufficient to lead a new species? For example, now I am human, maybe there is another species. Is it possible? That's a question. I don't think it's, no, I don't think so. However, you can change a mutation, random mutation, and gives to the different variation, leads to the different kind of direction. But ultimately, it's not possible to create a new species because variation is always exist in the population. Not only in our case, even you take insects and everything. There's no two insects that look similar.
Yes.
Because a lot of genetic variation is there. You don't require any new more mutations. Even you have a new mutations, but that is actually not leading to the new. Most of the time it's neutral. It doesn't have any phenotypic variants. Otherwise it's deleterious. That is actually eliminated by natural selection in a population. So it's hardly you ever able to fix it. Even you fix it, it may not lead to the new species.
Yes, I hope this answers one of your questions. The others you can email and then get answered. So moving forward, I would like to request Sukadev Dasji, please unmute yourself and pose your question.
Hi, Srikantji. Namaskar. I was so inspired by you, when you were there in Calcutta. And this is the first time I'm raising my questions. Actually, on the first day of our summer school also I raised, but I didn't have a chance to speak because of some malfunction on my system. Okay, so I'm so interested in this, but let me just speak something on this kind of evolutions, but you can just refine me. So far, we have been trained up in our biological system of Darwinian evolution theory that is based on the mutations. Then when the mutation become so advanced, then it become a new species. So far, in our day-to-day experiment, either in the plant or in the animals, we don't find any new species being evolved from the parental, say, species. Whatever the Mendel's did it in his garden, that only the variations are there. Okay. Another thing is that this modern empirical science, which is based on the chemical evolutions, mostly strongly, Gumaraj emphasized that it is strongly based on the Darwinian evolution theory, which is completely a kind of a very challenging to our model of Vedantic perspective, even in the Christianity also, when there was a big flood, that Noah was trying to save all the species of one pair each, right? Like in our scriptures, when the Manu was trying to save a pair of species in his boat when the Masavatar was being there. Okay. Is it only a kind of a simple, say, interpretations? Because in the Western empirical science, there is no any comparative study other than their own hypothesis. But at least we have now two hypotheses. One is from the empirical view, and one is from the religious or spiritual perspective. So there is a two comparison. So which one is much closer? If the origin of the species is not from a common ancestor, then it's a parallel. So in Vikramasinghe's, Professor Vikramasinghe's hypothesis of the origin of the species is also not only from the earth, but that could be also be happen in the earth, in the thermal chimneys, in the oceans. It could be also another perspective, or maybe from the outer space. If it is in outer space, it's too early for us to deplore at the moment, because alien theories are also coming up, like a human evolution and a forbidden archaeology from our Michael Cremo and Sadaputas. It's a very, very fascinating. So how you give your own, say, interpretation for these evolutions? Either in the empirical is more feasible, or parallel one that we are following today.
I would like to request Srikantji to keep it short, because we're already running out of time.
Okay. Yeah, I will. Okay. If I understood your question correctly, like, okay, you can actually create a species, new species. For example, if you cross two different plants, then artificial selection, you can create a new species. But those species is not will not create to any viable offsprings. And there is some plasticity you can accommodate in mutation or whatever selection, natural selection, artificial selection you do. For example, donkey and horse, when you cross it, you will get a mule, but it's not sterile. Gene frequency and gene flow can take place, but it will stop with the next generation itself. So when it comes to your second question, of course, the more and more the experimental things actually supports that. One thing is, okay, fossil records is not very inconsistent. Whenever you find a new fossil, you have to accommodate somewhere. It's so inconsistent. And then when it comes to, it could be that I don't know about what Vikram Singh told actually, but it could be maybe that these all organisms exist parallelly, because if there is no common descendant, it could be that they already existed all the time. It's just that some are going to extend, some maybe, yeah. If you anything you manipulate more and more, that organism is the mutation, whatever way that is going to deleterious or whatever, then you cannot. So certain amount of plasticity is there, you can accommodate with mutation or anything, but beyond that, organism will die. And so, and maybe these organisms could be maybe existed parallelly throughout the timeline. I hope I answered. I don't know, like, but we can also chat afterwards.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Srikantji.
Thank
Indeed,
you.
there are many questions lined up, and I also received many questions in chat, but unfortunately, we don't have time to go through them now. But I'd like to request all of you to write it, and then we'll make sure that it reaches to the speaker. But now I'd like to thank you for such a wonderful presentation. All this discussion itself says that how wonderful this has been.